Hello, I'm Mark Tucker.
Hey there, I'm Alan Firstimer. Welcome back to Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs.
So last week we talked about the Jovo plugin that you've been working on called Jovo Community Plugin Tools.
Very descriptive name.
Yeah, it says right up front what it is. And you talked a little bit about the shuffle array method that you had or tools that you had there. Why don't we talk about the streak counter this week and maybe give us a little bit of a brief background on what this is for anybody who didn't watch last week. Shame on you.
Yeah, so if you're interested in the streak counter that I'm talking about today, then check out the previous episode where we talked about the shuffle array. That might be useful as well. But just to remind everybody, this plugin is specifically for Jovo version 4, and it has a few things in common. This makes the tool easily available inside of Jovo handler functions off of this object. So you can do this $sign JC tools. That's short for Jovo Community Tools streak counter. And then there's a number of different functions that are available off of the streak counter that allows you to do certain things. And this plugin, like the other plugins in this tool set, store data that are about the tool in user data storage that Jovo provides so that it persists across sessions. Like if you're wanting to keep a list of how many days in a row you've visited an application, that's going to have to be something that's persisted across a number of different days, right? So this is a daily streak counter that helps you keep track of if something's happened continuously day after day after day. If you miss a day, the streak counter goes back to 1 and you start all over again.
Now, I got 2 questions before we begin. The first is this only measures daily streaks, right?
Yes, it does. And I've thought about other things and other ways that this might be configured, or maybe there should be other counters that would be for other different time periods or for other different counters. But yes, daily counters. And
that day is reset when?
Well, it is reset at UTC 0 time.
Okay.
So for me, that would be depending on, I guess, if there is no daylight savings time in Arizona, but I am affected by daylight savings time, so it seems like it is. But that would be 5 p.m.
Okay, so that makes sense. The other thing is that it's pretty straightforward to think, this is the sort of thing you might want to add at the beginning to see how many days in a row they've showed up.
Yep.
But it doesn't just need to be attached to your start intent or your welcome intent, does it?
No. And so all of these counters or the shuffle array allows you to pass in, or requires you to pass in actually, a key, which is a string of your choosing. And so like in your launch event, you could have like a launch streak. How many times have they launched this voice application, and have they done it in a row? It could also be used, you could have another one for question correct. So like if you wanted to do question of the day and keep track of your streak of how many questions in a row you've gotten correct, then you just give it a different key and it will keep track of that separately from the other thing. So there's lots of different ways, wherever you want to use it. It works well in a game, but it might also be something that you give some positive feedback or some encouragement when people come back and visit your skill day to day. Like, hey, congratulations! You've visited us 5 days in a row, or different things like that, just to add some additional functionality to the skill or action.
And you keep track of how many days the streak is going for, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what are the methods? How do we use this?
Okay. So it's pretty simple. There are 2 main functions: get count and reset. So you could, at some point in time, if you wanted
pretty straightforward.
manually reset the counter because something happened, then you can go ahead and manually reset that. It just basically wipes all the data out for that key, and you start back over with 1. And then get count is just going to give you the number that's associated with your streak. If this is the first time you run it, then you'll get back a number 1. Then the next day you come back and you call get count, it's going to give you back the number 2. If you wait 2 days and try it again, then you're going to get back the number 1, because now you've broken your streak and you're starting all over again.
So really, it just manages just about everything.
Yes.
Behind that's fantastic. That really, I mean, I think that's one of the beautiful things about all of these tools, is that they really make it as simple as possible for you to just use them.
Yeah, there's no excuse to not have streaks in your games or voice apps now, because there's really nothing that you have to do other than call get count and pass it a key, and then you're done.
That's pretty simple. I think the other thing to kind of point out is that you also, again, have this get entry and set entry methods, which do the actual work of getting the management object from the user object and saving it again in the other end. And you expose that, which again seems fantastic. So so let's talk about how it is implemented.
Behind the scenes, whenever you call get count, it's going to check to see, well, first of all, if the data storage is initialized or not, because this might be the very first time you're calling it with the key. And so if the data storage location doesn't exist for the key launch, then it's going to go ahead and create one and set it with a default count of 1. And it's going to go ahead and it's also storing something I call last day. In JavaScript, you can call the date get time function, and it will tell you the number of milliseconds since the epic of, January 1st, 1970, right? So I do some calculation, and I convert that number into the number of days since the epic. Okay. And so all I'm doing on get count is I'm doing a diff to see if you're calling it and the number of days today is, or like right now when you're called it, is the same as what's being stored, then nothing's changed. It's not going to do anything other than just return back what the count is. There's no change to the count. But if there's a difference, it's going to do one of 2 things. If the difference between those 2 days is 1, it's going to increment the counter and save it. If it's greater than 1, then it's going to reset it back to 1. And that's all it's doing behind the scenes. It's just keeping track of how many days since the epic, and how and the difference between the last time you saved that last day value.
It's all pretty straightforward. It almost sounds deceptively simple.
Well, and I've used this in a number of different games, and so I've thought about this, and I kept thinking, well, I should bundle those all together into some sort of like a game or a tools plugin. And I was going to do that, and that was about the same time that Jovo 4 was coming out. And I'm like, well, I'll just wait until I get to a chance to kind of ramp up on version 4 and figure out how it works behind the scenes. There's some slight differences in how plugins work from version 3 to version 4, and so had some time this last weekend and thought, you know what, I think it's time to start putting some of these things together. But StreetCounter is something that's really helpful, and I've used quite a bit.
So that was StreetCounter. Now, as I kind of described it the other time, we've got kind of the flip version of that, and that's the recharge counter.
Yes, recharge counter is fun. I'm going to bring up the screen here so I can quickly look at the documentation for it. But there's good documentation on the site of how to install the plugin, what methods are available, what they do, even how it's stored behind the scenes. I've really tried to make it as straightforward. As a developer, it bothers me when I don't understand how something works or kind of what its purpose is. So I was really trying to make sure that there was no question on what was happening. The purpose of the recharge counter, and I've used that, we've mentioned before in Snatchword, where you have a set number of actions, but then once you use that set number of actions, you have to wait for it to recharge before you can use it again. And this is a little trick, or a good thing that you can do in games to encourage people to come back, because you can do a certain amount of things, and so there's a certain amount of gameplay, and you can kind of tailor that to how long you would want the gameplay to be on any given day. But then this gives them a reason. If you set the recharge back to, it could be 15 minutes, it could be 3 hours if you want to encourage them to come back the same day, or it could be 24 hours if you want them to come back. And 24 hours is probably a pretty good time, because if they're playing at this time today, then there's a good chance that they might be available to play this time tomorrow. And so
so you can set how many charges you have.
Yes.
And
So
a recharge
you set a max number. So like if you wanted to have 3 actions, it could be, I don't know, think about it. I kind of think about this as like the old, was it Farmville, where you were doing some crops and then you planted some crops, but then you had to come back after a certain amount of time to come back and play. That's kind of what I was thinking when I created this. So, maybe you can plant 10 things and then you have to wait for the recharge to happen. Now, the recharge is actually on each of the different items.
Oh, that was my next question.
Yeah.
So if I've got a recharge time of an hour and I use just one, and then half an hour later I use the second one, after an hour, only the first one will have been recharged. The second one still needs to wait another half hour for it to recharge.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I think that's the right way to handle it, but that certainly must have added complexity to the data structure. A
little bit, yeah. It's I'm actually having to keep a time value for each of the different slots that are available in the in the max list. So this isn't something that you're going to like do 100 of or something. It's something that's kind of manageable.
Yeah.
This could be like we said, it could be used in a game scenario. You might, when your voice app starts up, maybe there's some sort of a notice or like a nag to do something, and you don't want that to happen every time. You could set the max count as 1, and then whatever the time period it is, and you can have both, because you pass it a key to describe what the thing is that's being recharged, and it could be actions, it could be reminders, it could be upsell opportunities inside of in-skill purchasing. There's just, it doesn't have to be used in a game, and it doesn't have to be used in like in that way. There's other creative ways that anything that you want to only happen periodically and not have to worry about it. All the logic of how to set that up, you can just do a recharge count.
Okay, so let's talk us through the API for this.
Okay, so once again, the same kind of some of the same things that you've seen before. Everything is going to require a key to distinguish one from the other, because you could have multiple in the same app. There's the same get entry and set entry values, but like the data structure is going to be different. It's the data structure specific to this this tool, the recharge counter. And there's a reset, so that you could decide that, hey, I'm going to go ahead and just reset everything for this key all over again and start over
and to be clear, that what does reset do in this case? Does that give all of the charges back, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, the 2 things that you can set is the max number and the time in minutes of the recharge.
Okay.
And then, so those 2 values are stored, and then there's also an array of times that is going to be the number of minutes since the epic time. So it's just that value scrunched down into minutes, so that now you can tell, how many minutes. And right now everything is minutes. You can set the recharge minutes. You can ask how much time until the next recharge, and that's going to come back as minutes. And so if minutes isn't what you want, then you're going to have to do your own conversion into something else, into to an hours value, or into an hours minutes, or days hours minutes, whatever it is that you want to do. That's kind of up to you. But the mechanism that's being stored is in minutes.
Makes sense. Okay.
All right. So set max and set recharge minutes sets the scenario up. Set max is usually like 1 or 3 or 10 or whatever. And then recharge minutes is 15 minutes. It could be 1 day, it could be 2 days, it could be 21 days, whatever you want to do. So then there is a get count, and that's just going to tell you how many counters you have available to use.
That's
it
pretty
could be,
straightforward.
Yeah, 0 through up to whatever the
0 through
number is.
max.
Yep, that's all that you get.
Okay.
Subtract is going to decrement your counter. So if you've got 3, if your max was 3, then you call subtract. It's going to decrement that down to 2.
Okay.
What that does is behind the scenes in the times array, it fills in a slot with the time, minutes since epoch of this time that you subtracted it.
The current time.
Of the current time.
Okay.
Of the current time that subtract was called.
So when a charge was, so you have an array of when the charge was last used.
Yes.
Okay.
So then to figure out what the count is, it's the max length minus how many slots are filled in that array, and that's how many you have left.
How many slots
have values?
Okay.
Since the time array is keeping track of the last time that or the time when the subtract was called.
Okay.
Then so now we've got 2 available, so 2 slots available, and so your count is going to be 2. When you do get next recharge in minutes, it sorts the values in the times array, and it picks the one that's going to recharge the soonest, and it gives you the time in minutes until that happens. So you could use the get next time and recharge in minutes to somebody tries to do something, you're like, oh, sorry, you can't do that. Come back in 30 minutes.
Yep.
And you're able to do that. Now, if you still have slots available, then time in minutes, it's a recharge time in minutes is going to return back 0. You still have slots to fill. You can immediately do something right now. There is no time you have to wait to recharge. But if the slot array is all filled with all max number of values in there, it's going to tell you when the first one's going to, in essence, be removed from the array.
So when does one actually get removed from the array?
So when you call subtract, it's going to check and remove expired entries. When you get count, it's going to check and remove expired items. So it's nothing. There's no thing that's running behind the scenes pulling things off. It's just the next time that you care to know when the next one is, it's going to first remove entries from the array before it then either gives you the recharge minutes or gives you the count or does the subtract. So that's kind of that's the little trick behind the scenes, is that whenever you're asking for it. Now, the other trick is that subtract actually returns back a Boolean. So if you say subtract and you've got slots that are available, so now you're using up one of the slots, it's going to return back true. I actually did subtract something.
Right. Got
it.
But
if your count is 0 and you do a subtract, it's going to give you back a false. So you can use a subtract to decrement something, figure out if you still have something available, if you really did something or not, and comment on that, and call recharge in minutes if you needed to.
Right. So basically, it lets you do things like say, it's an atomic operation, so if it succeeded or failed. Not that we have too much race conditions here anyway, but it lets you do it, and then if it succeeded, return how many are left, and if it failed, return when the next one needs to be done.
Yep.
So that's makes a lot of sense, rather than checking that beforehand and then taking action.
Yep.
That makes a lot of sense.
And you can call that as many times as you want. There's no
side effect if it fails.
Yeah, if there's nothing to subtract, it's just not going to do anything. It's going to return false, saying I didn't do anything, to let you know that nothing really happened. But that's information that you could immediately act on too. So that's the methods. I guess any questions on the methods available and what they do?
No, that's pretty straightforward. And I think I've said that for every one so far.
Well, thanks, because that's what I was intending. I
Well,
wanted like, what is the easiest thing? We're gonna worry about the data storage for you behind the scenes. We're gonna worry about allow you to pass in a key so you can have multiple of these in the app
right.
if you need to. And I only want to surface the things that you really need to know to use these, so it's as easy as to use as possible. It's kind of what I was shooting for.
I think you hit the mark on all of that.
Thank you. So we've kind of talked about this already, but just to reiterate, what's actually stored in the database is underneath the JC tools it's $user.data.jc tools.recharge the name of the key for the counter is then the following three values: the max value, and that only changes when you do a set max.
Yeah.
The recharge in minute only changes when you set
Same.
the set recharge in minutes. And then the times array, which there's different methods that you'll call that will remove items that have expired from that list, or subtract, which will add something to that list. And that's really all that's happening. If you wanted to get, if for some reason you wanted to get the max values and the recharge, then you could use that get entry and pass in the key, and it would return you back this object. So you could then check the max or the recharge in minutes if you needed to. But typically you won't. So it doesn't matter. So typically, the way Jovo works is that every time a request comes in as a request response, a turn in the conversation, it's going to pull the data values out of user storage. It's going to actually new up your plugins all over again. But because things were stored in user storage, now they have context. And so it doesn't matter. You could have, like, in your launch function or your welcome function, whatever, you could have the thing that sets the max count, the set max value and the recharge for a certain counter. It doesn't matter because you'd just be rewriting it with the same thing anyway.
So the max and the timing can be set per user.
You could, yes.
So, for example, if you've got a user that has, that has purchased the gold package, they get a reset time of 15 minutes. But if they only purchase the silver package, they get the reset time of 30 minutes. That
is true. And because you control what the key is, well, and this is a little bit different too, because on the Alexa side of things, this is off of user data storage, which is really the account that your Alexa has been set up with. But there's also an ability to turn on personalization. What would really be interesting is to make sure that the data storage options actually work with personalization, and could, if you know the unique person ID, that you would actually have a separate data record for that. That's one way that you could handle it. I think that would require some configuration or something to make that happen. That's something I'll have to talk to the Jovo guys about. But if you wanted to still have things stored like at the account level, but have these different things based on the person ID, you can incorporate the person ID as part of the key that you're passing in. So you could have different, keep track of different individuals. So like some people would, like if I'm speaking, it would say, oh, you've got, three actions left. And, my son was playing, and it's like, oh, you have to wait 15 minutes until. So you could conceptually have a game where more than one person, as long as they've got voice profiles set up, could be playing a game at the same time and keep track of different.
Right. And and because on Alexa, they end up as the same user because it's the same device.
Yeah, it's the same account. All these voice profiles are under one account. And so that the user ID is really the account ID. We've talked about this before.
Yeah. So very, very cool.
Thank you. I'm not pre-announcing anything, but there is some badges work that I've done before, and I'm all thinking of a badges plugin. I've done work before, and it's just like it is quite a bit of work, and there's some things I didn't like about how I implemented last time that I've sometimes I've stayed up until 2 a.m. thinking about because I can't sleep. I start thinking about it before I go to bed, and then I can't stop thinking about it because I'm thinking about how this works. So not pre-announcing, but one of the next things I might want to tackle would be at badges. That might be its own plugin, or it might be part of this tools.
So very cool stuff. And again, it's open source. So if people have feedback or if there's something they want to work on, the source is there as part of jovo-community. And
you can ask questions there, issues. If you want to join, add your own tool, then you could do a pull request, and we can talk about make sure that it's consistent with the other tools on how they work. But I'm not averse to expanding this list of tools in the plugin, and you can just contact us on LinkedIn or on Twitter and ask questions or give us feedback.
And of course, we can discuss this again in the future on Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for sharing this. This has been interesting.
Yep, you're welcome.